I thought I bought a place to hide. Then the old loom started telling my family's story.
No room, no family willing to claim her, no loom left to inherit, just one canvas bag and $127.43 she had saved from washing dishes after school, and with that money she bought an abandoned tapestry weaver's hall for $8 outside Lowell, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, forgotten by county maps since 1947. Half the north roof sagged 6 inches. Birds had nested inside the chimney throat. The county condemned it on March 18, 2022, with demolition planned for the first dry week of May. But beneath the massive oak warp beam stood a carved foot-treadle no one had opened in decades, hiding a compartment that held money, unfinished work, and words meant for someone who had nowhere else to go. Before we continue, if stories like this mean something to you, hit subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Lily Margaret Hale had been leaving her whole life without knowing it. As a child in Dracut, she learned to keep her possessions small enough to move quickly. Her books fit one shelf. Her winter clothes fit beneath the bed. When voices tightened downstairs, she carried a blanket into the narrow hallway outside her grandmother's sewing room, where the floorboards stayed warm above the furnace pipe. Her father, Daniel Hale, believed usefulness was the nearest thing to virtue. He kept receipts in labeled envelopes and disliked any object whose value could not be named in dollars. When he entered a room, he straightened something before he spoke: a chair, a picture frame, the edge of a rug. Only Evelyn Mercer, Lily's grandmother, seemed to understand that some things became more valuable because no one could price them correctly. Every Saturday morning, Lily walked 3 blocks to Evelyn's narrow clapboard house and entered through the kitchen where a kettle was already breathing on the stove. Evelyn had been a tapestry weaver for nearly 50 years. Her hands were broad at the knuckles, and the pad of her left thumb carried a permanent shallow groove from tightening warp. Her loom filled the brightest room in the house. It was a tall, high-warp frame of dark oak, taller than either of them, with wool butterflies hanging from the unfinished face like small sleeping birds. Evelyn taught Lily to pass weft through the vertical warp without tugging the edges inward, to beat gently rather than angrily, and to join 2 colors with interlocking turns when a hard slit would weaken the image. At noon they ate toast with apple butter beside the loom. Then Evelyn let Lily choose 1 colored strand, not a whole section, 1 strand. "Put it where the picture needs courage," she would say. Lily usually chose red. Once, when Lily was 11, she snapped a warp thread while tightening the lower beam. She froze with both hands still gripping the cord. Evelyn did not scold her. She tied the broken ends with a weaver's knot and said, "A broken thread is not the end of the cloth." It meant the mistake still required work. Nothing repaired itself merely because someone wished it had never broken. Evelyn died in October 2020 after a brief illness that emptied the house faster than Lily understood. The wool went into cartons. Her shuttles disappeared into an estate box. The brass scissors shaped like a stork were taken with the sewing things. The great oak loom remained. For a while, 17 months later, Lily came home from a late shift and saw 2 clean rectangles in the dust of the spare room where its feet had stood. Her father was washing a coffee cup. "We sold it," he said. An antique dealer from New Hampshire had paid cash that afternoon. Lily placed both palms against the bare wall. Her mother, Carol, sat at the kitchen table with a folded dish towel in her lap. She looked at Lily once, then began refolding the towel into a smaller square. The house had always been controlled through atmosphere rather than blows. Doors were closed carefully enough to sound deliberate. Meals could become silent punishments lasting 40 minutes. Questions were answered with another question. Money was discussed in lowered voices just beyond Lily's bedroom door. After Evelyn died, the quiet changed. It became supervisory. Her father began asking where Lily had been, what she had spent, why she needed bus fare when she could walk. He called the loom dead furniture and the wool moth food. Her mother corrected nothing. That night, Lily opened the hall closet and took down Evelyn's old canvas weaving bag. Her father stood in the doorway. He held Lily's house key between 2 fingers. The brass key turned slowly under the kitchen light. "You leave tonight, you do not come back." Exactly 8 words. Lily looked toward her mother. Carol was still seated at the table. Beside her sat Evelyn's blue sugar bowl, the one object Lily had asked to keep after the funeral. Carol placed both hands around it, drew it 2 inches closer to herself, and lowered her eyes. That was the answer. Lily packed 2 shirts, jeans, socks, a toothbrush, Evelyn's worn wooden tapestry comb, and $611,018 in cash. Her father opened the front door. Cold March rain struck the porch steps. Lily stepped through without turning around. 6 weeks can reduce a life with remarkable precision. The first 4 nights she slept in the rear booth of a 24-hour laundromat in Lowell, feeding quarters into the cheapest dryer whenever the attendant watched too closely. She folded Evelyn's canvas bag beneath her head and woke each time the door buzzer sounded. Her money fell to $563. In Chelmsford, she paid for 3 nights at a roadside motel where the carpet smelled of cigarettes beneath fresh disinfectant. That cost $200. She stopped buying coffee. In Lawrence, she slept 2 nights in a women's shelter and 1 beneath the fluorescent waiting room lights at the bus terminal after every bed was taken. She learned that a backpack under both knees was harder to steal. Her money fell below $200. She washed in library bathrooms, changed socks in locked stalls, and wrote every expense on the back page of Evelyn's old weaving notebook. Bus fare, $2.40 soup, $3.75, laundry, $4.50. By late April, she had $127.43. She had also learned that homelessness was often less dramatic than people imagined. Mostly, it was the exhausting work of deciding where to sit without being asked to leave. On April 27th, rain pinned Lowell beneath a gray sky. Lily entered the Pollard Memorial Library because it was warm. She sat near the public computers until a librarian with silver glasses placed a stack of discarded local notices beside the recycling tray. Lily began reading them only because she had nowhere else to be. Estate sale, roofing labor wanted. 2 rooms for rent, then a county surplus notice printed in narrow black type, abandoned structure. For tax disposition, former Weaver's Hall. Minimum consideration $8. Buyer assumes all liabilities. Lily read it twice. The address lay beyond the Old Mill District, near a neglected branch road she knew only from bus windows. The building was scheduled for demolition unless transferred before May 2nd. She carried the notice to the reference desk. Is this real? The librarian adjusted her silver glasses and studied the page. County seal says it is. Lily looked down at the figure again. $8. It was absurdly little money for something condemned and too much money for something useless. She took Evelyn's wooden tapestry comb from her bag and ran 1 thumb across its worn teeth. Then she copied the clerk's office address into the notebook, bought the cheapest bus ticket she could toward Lowell's northern edge, and kept the classified notice folded inside her coat where the rain could not reach it. By sunrise, Lily was traveling toward a building everyone else had already decided was finished. The bus left Lily at a cracked shelter on the northern edge of Lowell just after 4 in the afternoon, with 16 miles still between her and the address written in Evelyn's notebook. She walked 7 before darkness settled over the low fields beyond the Merrimack. Her canvas bag rubbed one shoulder raw. A cold wind came off the river flats, carrying the smell of wet leaves and diesel from distant Route 113. When rain began, she found an open-sided hay barn behind an unused pasture and slept between stacked square bales, wrapped in her coat while the temperature dropped to 34 degrees. At dawn, her shoes were stiff with mud. She walked the remaining 9 miles. By 8:30, the town center had begun opening around her. McAvoy Hardware with its green awning, Haskell Pharmacy beneath a faded mortar and pestle sign, Doris Bell's Corner Cafe steaming its front windows, Peterman Feed and Grain with burlap sacks stacked behind glass, and Leary's Barber Shop, where a striped pole turned slowly, though no customer sat inside. Lily stopped only long enough to buy a plain roll at the cafe. 75 cents, she ate half and folded the rest into a napkin. The county clerk's office occupied the ground floor of a brick municipal building beside an old congregational church. Inside, radiators knocked beneath tall windows. The floor smelled faintly of wax and wet wool. Behind a wooden counter sat a woman with iron-gray hair held by 2 crossed tortoiseshell pins. Her brass nameplate read Mrs. Helen Ward County Property. Clerk Lily placed the surplus notice on the counter. Mrs. Ward did not touch it immediately. "You are here about the Weaver's Hall." "Yes, ma'am." The clerk removed her glasses, folded them, and looked at Lily's mud-streaked shoes. "You understand the property has no electricity." "Yes, ma'am." "You understand the well has not been certified potable since 1989. "Yes, ma'am." "You understand the county will not repair the roof, chimney, foundation, windows, road access, septic system, or anything else that fails after transfer." "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Ward paused. "You understand that if the building becomes an immediate public hazard, ownership makes demolition your responsibility." Lily held the woman's gaze. "Yes, ma'am." A radiator clicked behind her. Mrs. Ward put her glasses back on. $8. Lily counted the bills onto the counter one at a time. The clerk inspected each as though the amount were $8,000. Then she brought out a deed packet thick with carbon copies. Lily signed 6 places. Her hand shook once from hunger, so she pressed her wrist against the desk until it stopped. Mrs. Ward carried the papers to a black cast-iron press mounted beside a cabinet of property maps. She inserted the deed, pulled a long brass handle, and stamped the transfer seal with a dull mechanical thump. The sound changed something. Not much, but something. Mrs. Ward slid one copy toward Lily. "Take County Road 7 east for 1.8 miles. Turn left where the old granite horse trough sits beside the stone wall. No sign. Walk north on Weaver Lane until the pavement ends. The hall is another half-mile past that." Lily folded the deed carefully. Mrs. Ward was still looking at the signature line. "Hale." Lily stopped. "Yes." The clerk touched the paper with one fingernail. "Your family from Dracut?" Lily hesitated before answering. "My grandmother was—" "What was her name?" "Evelyn Mercer." Mrs. Ward sat back. For the first time, the practiced official stillness left her face. "Evelyn Mercer Hale?" Lily nodded. Mrs. Ward opened a drawer and took out a yellowed index card from an old property file. She read something written there in pencil. I knew that name. Lily moved closer to the counter. "How?" "Not personally." Mrs. Ward turned the card around, though the handwriting was too faded to read from where Lily stood. "There used to be a textile guild in Lowell. Hand weavers, dyers, lace people. My mother kept their tax-exempt correspondence for the county in the 70s. She tapped one line. "Your grandmother petitioned twice to preserve this hall." Lily said nothing. 1978, again in 83. Mrs. Ward opened another folder. She was not the owner. Apparently, she wanted the County Historical Commission to prevent demolition after the Weaver family estate dissolved. Did she ever come here? Several times, according to the notes. The clerk studied Lily now with a different expression, neither warmth nor suspicion. Recognition, perhaps. There is a notation that she demonstrated tapestry work inside the building as a girl. Some summer program, 1961. Lily felt the wooden tapestry comb inside her canvas bag pressing against her hip. Her grandmother had never mentioned the hall. Or perhaps Lily had never known which stories to remember. Mrs. Ward reached under the counter and produced a small ring holding 2 rusted keys. These were supposed to go with the deed. She placed them beside Lily's $8 receipt. "Neither may work." Lily picked them up. "Thank you," as Mrs. Ward gave one short nod. Then, before Lily reached the door, the clerk said, "Your grandmother had good hands." Lily turned. Mrs. Ward looked down at her papers. "My mother owned one of her small woven pieces. Winter trees, very plain." She adjusted the corner of the deed stack. She kept it 40 years. Outside, the morning had warmed enough to soften the mud. Lily followed County Road 7 past stone walls veined with moss and houses set far back beneath bare maples. At the granite trough, she turned onto Weaver Lane. The pavement narrowed, cracked, then disappeared beneath gravel and last year's leaves. A man splitting kindling beside a red farmhouse watched her approach. He was thin, white-bearded, and wore one leather glove while the other hand remained bare. A black and white dog stood beside him without barking. "You headed up to the old hall?" Lily stopped. "I am." The man looked at the canvas bag, then at her shoes. "Road gets worse after the walnuts, I'll manage." The dog came forward and sniffed her cuff. The man rested both hands on his axe. "Name's Amos Pike, Lily Hale." Something flickered across his face at the surname, but he did not ask. "That dog's Nell. She knows more about that building than I do." Nell sneezed. Amos pointed with the axe handle. "Stay left, where the lane forks, right side goes to marsh." Lily thanked him and continued. The walnut trees appeared 20 minutes later, old trunks standing in two ragged lines as if they had once marked an entrance. Their branches were still bare, and last autumn's black husks crushed beneath Lily's soles with a bitter green smell. Then she saw the hall. It stood beyond a low meadow on a fieldstone foundation, a long timber-framed building roughly 30 feet wide and nearly 70 feet end to end. Weathered clapboards covered most of the exterior, though several sections had fallen away and exposed dark oak framing beneath. The roof dipped visibly along the north slope. An old brick chimney leaned perhaps 2 inches from true. Above the double front doors hung a wooden sign with only 4 legible words beneath peeling paint, Mercer, and vela tapestry. Weaver's Lily stopped walking, Mercer, her grandmother's maiden name. Wind moved through the empty branches behind her. She took out the deed, then the keys. The first key entered the front lock but would not turn. The second went halfway in and caught against rust. Lily leaned her shoulder against the door. Wood shifted somewhere inside. She tried the key again while lifting the sagging handle. This time the lock gave. The doors opened inward with a long scrape over the floor. Cold air came out first. It smelled of dust, old wool, mouse nesting, and the faint mineral damp of stone that had gone unheated for years. Lily stood on the threshold until her eyes adjusted. The front room was enormous. Late morning light entered through cracked windows and fell in pale rectangles across wide pine boards. Bird droppings whitened one corner beneath a hole in the ceiling. A row of wooden pegs still ran along the east wall, and something that might once have been a cutting table leaned on 3 legs. Her footsteps disturbed dust. Above her, wings exploded in the rafters. Lily ducked instinctively as 2 pigeons crossed the room and disappeared through a broken pane. The silence afterward seemed larger. She moved deeper inside. Her fingertips brushed the wall and came away powdered with old plaster. Somewhere behind the boards a mouse scratched once, paused, then scratched again. The back room smelled different: cedar, dry wool, machine oil. Lily stood in the doorway. A massive, high-warp floor loom occupied the far half of the room. It was nearly 9 feet tall. The frame was blackened oak, built with mortise and tenon joints thick enough to outlast generations. A heavy warp beam crossed its lower body. Foot-treadles rested beneath it, broad and carved from solid timber. Hundreds of slack warp threads still hung from the upper beam, gray with dust but unbroken in places. On one side, beneath a linen cover collapsed with age, lay a tapestry. Unfinished. Lily did not uncover it. Not yet. She walked once around the loom without touching anything. Outside, wind pushed dry walnut leaves against the building. By evening, she had found an iron hand pump beside the rear wall, an outhouse leaning among sumac, and a rusted stove whose chimney pipe disappeared into darkness overhead. She did not trust any of them. For supper, she ate the second half of the roll from Doris Bell's cafe and drank the last water from her bottle. Night arrived early inside the hall. Lily spread her coat on the floor beneath the least damaged section of roof. She used the canvas bag as a pillow and placed Evelyn's wooden tapestry comb beside her hand. The temperature fell. Timbers contracted with small, hard knocks. Something moved in the rafters. Lily lay awake looking toward the loom, visible only as a deeper darkness against the room. She had paid $8 for walls that could not keep out weather, a well she could not drink from, a roof already failing, and a building carrying her grandmother's family name above its door. For the first time in 6 weeks, no one could ask her to leave. Every broken thread can be tied and woven into a new beginning. By the 3rd morning, Lily knew which floorboards complained before they carried her weight. The plank beside the front threshold gave one short crack. 2 boards near the stove groaned together. The long board beside the loom made no sound at all. She had also learned that the hand pump produced clear water only after 23 hard strokes, and that clear did not mean safe. She filled 2 enamel buckets for washing and carried drinking water from a public fountain beside the municipal building. The outhouse required more courage. Its roof leaked over the left corner. One hinge had torn from the door, and a raccoon had made a winter nest beneath the seat box. Lily waited until the animal left at dusk, then nailed a scrapboard over the opening and swept out leaves with a broken broom. Small victories became useful because no one applauded them. On the 4th day, she walked back toward town carrying a list written on the last clean page of Evelyn's notebook. McAvoy hardware smelled of linseed oil, rope, cedar shavings, and the warm metallic dust that gathers around bins of loose nails. A brass bell struck twice when Lily entered. Behind the counter stood a heavy-set man with a missing tip on his left index finger. He was arranging carriage bolts by length without looking at the labels. "You bought the haul." Lily stopped. "Does everyone know? Everybody who buys $8 buildings." He wiped his hand on his apron and extended it. "Frank McAvoy, Lily Hale." At the surname, he looked up properly. His eyes narrowed for half a second, then he only nodded. "What needs doing first?" "Everything. That is not a list." Lily unfolded the notebook. He read it. "Chimney brush, stove cement, lamp oil, roofing felt, nails, bucket, gloves. I have $17 I can spend." Frank leaned both palms on the counter. "You have employment, not yet. Collateral, the building." "That answer is funnier than you meant it to be." Lily waited. Frank lifted the notebook again. "I keep 30-day accounts for farmers, church committees, and people who have already disappointed me once." "I haven't disappointed you. Give it time." He studied her shoes, then the list. Finally, he pulled a small ledger from beneath the register. Name, she gave it address. The Weaver's Hall. He wrote slowly. "You pay what you can every Saturday. Even if what you can is 50 cents, you come in and say it." Lily nodded. Frank pointed the pencil at her. "Silence is what ruins credit." Then he walked the aisles with her. A 6-inch wired chimney brush cost $4.85. A tub of furnace cement, $2.10. Lamp oil was 89 cents a quart. A pair of canvas gloves cost $125. A box of cut nails was $3.40. A second-hand galvanized bucket dented at the base was 60 cents. Frank wrote every figure in the ledger. At the counter, he added a paperback manual with a faded orange cover. Home repair for country houses. Lily opened it. There were chapters on roofs, masonry, windows, plaster, floors, wells, and chimneys. "I cannot afford this." "You aren't buying it." She looked at him. "My brother bought that book in 1972. He read 6 pages and decided beer was easier." Frank pushed it across the counter. "Bring it back when the building stops trying to kill you." The chimney came first. Lily read the chapter twice at the hardware counter and once more sitting on the front steps of the hall. The old stovepipe entered a brick flue about shoulder height. She disconnected it carefully, laying each rusted section on newspaper. Black flakes fell from the elbow. Creosote. Some was dry and brittle, some had hardened into glossy tar. She tied the wire brush to a 40-foot rope, climbed through a hatch onto the lower roof, and crawled on hands and knees because the boards beneath the shingles felt soft. At the chimney, she dropped the weighted brush down the flue. It stopped 6 feet in. She pulled it up. A clump of twigs came with it. The second pass brought feathers. The third brought an entire gray nest compacted with soot. Lily worked from 10 in the morning until nearly 4, lowering the brush, twisting it, striking the blockage, withdrawing it, and emptying black debris into the dented bucket. By the 5th hour, soot had entered her sleeves and collected beneath her fingernails. The flue finally opened with a sound like gravel pouring through a pipe. A column of old creosote dropped into the fireplace cleanout. She filled almost 2 buckets. Before reconnecting the stove, she held a small candle near the open thimble. The flame bent inward. Draft. She waited another hour anyway. Then she sealed the stovepipe joints with furnace cement, let it skin over, and built the smallest fire she could manage. Newspaper, 2 handfuls of dry twigs. 3 pieces of split maple Amos Pike had left beside her door without explanation. The paper caught. Flame moved upward. Smoke entered the pipe and disappeared. Lily stood motionless. Nothing leaked. She added 1 small log. For 20 minutes she watched every seam. The iron stove began to tick softly as it warmed. That night she boiled water in a dented saucepan and cooked oats with half an apple sliced into them. Steam fogged one surviving window pane. It was the first hot meal she had eaten inside a place that belonged to her. Afterward, she carried the lamp into the back workroom. The loom waited where it had always waited. Now she began to inventory what remained. She found 7 useful things: a pair of iron tapestry shears, stiff with rust but intact, 3 hardwood bobbins wrapped with faded madder red wool, a brass warp gauge marked in quarter-inch increments, a bone-handled awl, 2 linen-patterned cartoons rolled around cedar dowels, a wooden comb with 12 broad teeth larger than Evelyn's, and beneath a fallen shelf a shallow die ledger whose pages listed alum, walnut hull, cochineal, and indigo in a careful hand. Lily did not open the unfinished tapestry. She moved around it. The loom itself demanded more caution. She tested each upright for rot with the awl. The outer sapwood showed insect damage, but the central oak remained hard. The upper beam turned less than an inch. The lower warp beam did not move at all. Lily crouched beside the treadles. There were 4. 3 produced the same dense oak sound when she tapped them with the wooden handle of the awl. The 4th did not. It answered hollowly. She tapped again. Solid, 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 hollow. Lily placed the lamp closer. The 4th treadle was broader than the others by perhaps half an inch, though the difference disappeared beneath dust. She pressed down. It resisted more weight than the others, not merely stiffness. Weight. She cleaned the edges with a dry brush. Near the heel of the treadle, almost hidden beneath blackened wax, appeared a circular line no wider than a thread. A cedar disc. Lily sat back on her heels. She did nothing for several minutes. Then she fetched Evelyn's tapestry comb from her bag. One tooth fit the narrow seam. She worked around the circle carefully, loosening hardened wax without cutting the wood. The disc turned, not much, but it turned. She wrapped it in a rag and twisted. The cedar plug came free with a soft, wooden sigh. Behind it was darkness. Lily held the lamp near the opening. The compartment ran lengthwise inside the carved oak treadle. Someone had hollowed the timber before assembly, then sealed the end so precisely that decades of dust had hidden the join. She reached in only as far as 2 fingers, paper. She withdrew her hand, then she went to the front room and washed it. She dried both hands completely. Only then did she return. The first package was wrapped in oiled linen tied with waxed thread. Inside lay a small walnut shuttle polished almost black by use, and a pair of narrow steel scissors with 1 finger loop repaired in silver solder. The second bundle held skeins of wool sealed in paper sleeves. The labels were handwritten. Madder weld, indigo, cochineal. The colors remained dim but alive beneath the wrapping. Deeper inside, Lily found a flat tin box. It barely cleared the opening. She pulled it slowly, supporting its weight with both hands until it rested across her knees. There was no lock. Inside, folded over the contents, lay a piece of linen. Under that were coins, rows of paper-wrapped rolls, loose silver pieces, several small cloth packets tied with thread, and 1 sealed envelope. Lily did not touch the envelope, not yet. She carried the tin box into the front room and placed it on the floor beneath the best window. Then she counted once, then again. The first packet held $20 St. Gaudens double eagles. The second held $10 Liberty Head gold coins. There were silver Morgan dollars and paper rolls worn walking Liberty $half, and a smaller group of Indian head gold pieces nested in cotton. Lily knew almost nothing about coin collecting. She counted only the face values and the paper currency folded beneath them. The numbers did not make sense at first. She wrote them in Evelyn's notebook, then added again and again, $46,000. Exactly. Not counting any collector value. At the bottom of the box lay a bronze military medal suspended from a faded ribbon. The engraving on the reverse read, PVT. Thomas Mercer and Lily held it by the edges. Beside it rested a half-finished tapestry no larger than a kitchen towel, carefully folded around a thin cedar board. She opened it only enough to see the image, a phoenix, not the bright mythical bird of children's books. This one was woven in dark russet, smoke gray, black, and 1 narrow line of red. Half its body had emerged from a field of ash. The upper wing remained unfinished. Several warp threads hung loose. Beneath the tapestry was the envelope. Her name was not written on it. Only 4 words. For the one who stays. Lily placed the envelope back inside the tin. Outside, evening had already begun. She could have opened it. Instead, she carried the box to the loom, set it beneath the warp beam, and covered it with the oiled linen. Then she walked out through the rear door. The land behind the hall dropped gradually toward marsh and slow water. She followed a narrow deer path until the building disappeared behind the walnut trees. At the edge of the water, she sat on a flat stone. A muskrat crossed once near the reeds. Farther out, the surface reflected a narrow band of copper sky. Lily put both hands between her knees to stop herself from reaching for the envelope in memory. $46,000 was more money than she had ever seen. The medal was older than anyone she had known. The phoenix had been left unfinished. And somewhere inside the building behind her waited a letter written for no one by name. She stayed beside the water until the first stars appeared and the cold entered through her coat. Every broken thread can be tied and woven into a new beginning. Morning entered the hall as a pale bar beneath the east windows. Lily built no fire. She carried the tin box to the long work table, wiped the dust from one end with her sleeve, and set the envelope there beneath the lamp. The handwriting stopped her before the seal did. The narrow capital letters, the long descending loops, the deliberate space between words. She had seen that hand on birthday cards, die labels, grocery list, and the margins of Evelyn's weaving notebook. Not her grandmother's mother's. A name Lily knew only from the backs of photographs. She opened the envelope with the bone-handled awl. The paper inside had been folded into thirds. She unfolded it. My dear one, whoever you are, if you have found this, then the oak treadle has held longer than I expected, and someone has finally been patient enough to notice that one piece of wood sounded different from the rest. My name is Margaret Ann Mercer. I'm writing this in Lowell, Massachusetts, on November 9th, 1988, after Dr. Samuel Keating at Lowell General told me the cancer in my pancreas has traveled beyond the place where surgery can help. He was gentle about it. I asked him how long. He said, perhaps months. That is enough time to put a workshop in order. You should know whose hands worked here. My great-grandmother, Eliza Mercer, born 1841 in Manchester, New Hampshire, learned figured weaving from her mother before coming to Lowell in 1858. Her daughter, Ruth Mercer Vale, born here in 1863, opened this hall with Nathaniel Vale in 1887. Ruth's daughter, Clara Vale Mercer, born 1884, kept the looms running through the Great War and buried her husband Thomas after he died from wounds received in France in 1918. Clara's daughter was my mother, Helen Mercer, born 1905, who taught me before machines and cheap imports made patience seem old-fashioned. I was born in 1928. Evelyn came after me. The trade here closed on October 14th, 1957, not because we had forgotten how to weave, because there were no longer enough customers willing to pay for the hours. After that came more than 30 years of silence. Silence does peculiar things to tools. Iron rusts. Wood twists. Wool gathers dust. But good instruction can wait. So I am leaving you some. When you warp the high loom, keep the tension even before you make it tight. Uneven warp ruins a face before the first weft enters. For wool, scour gently below 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat and movement together will felt what you meant to preserve. For alum mordant, begin near 1 part a loom to 4 parts. Cream of tartar by weight against the fiber, then adjust by the wool. Recipes are not commandments. Wool has its own answer. When 2 colors meet across a vertical line, interlock the wefts every few passes unless you intend a slit. Beat after each return, not with anger, but enough to seat the thread. And when you finish dyeing, let the wool rest before judging the color. Wet fiber lies. I have hidden money here because money has uses. But do not confuse it with the inheritance. The inheritance is the work. It is knowing how to repair a split warp without discarding the whole length. It is learning that a hand can make the same motion 10,000 times, and still remain attentive on the 10,001st. It is understanding that what lasts is usually made by someone who accepted being slow. There is a half-finished phoenix with this letter. I began it after Thomas's medal came back to the family and could not finish it then. Years later I tried again, still I stopped at the wing. Perhaps some work is meant to wait for another pair of hands. Behind the hall, beyond the walnut trees, there is an old stone marker near the marsh. The carved M is nearly gone. Beneath it we buried ashes from the last dye fire when the trade closed. Not a grave, only a marker for the work that ended there. Light the brass whale oil lamp if it still exists. My mother used it every winter morning before dawn. And if you find yourself alone in this place, remember that alone and abandoned are not the same condition. Someone repaired the roof before you. Someone planted those walnuts. Someone sharpened the shears. Someone saved the wool from mice. Someone hid these things because they believed another person might need them. Inheritance is not being given a perfect house, it is being given enough to begin repairing one. The house is not empty. It has been waiting. You are welcome here. Margaret Ann Mercer, November 9th, 1988. Lily reached the signature and stopped. She read the letter a second time from the beginning, more slowly. At the line about Evelyn, her thumb rested against the margin. At Thomas's name, she looked toward the metal inside the tin. When she finished, she did not press the pages to her chest or cry over them. She aligned the corners. Then she folded the paper carefully along its original creases. Outside, frost still held in the shadow of the north wall. Lily carried the letter through the back door and walked beyond the walnut trees toward the marsh. She searched among reeds and low stones until she found a granite marker sunk almost level with the earth. Moss filled most of the carving. Only one letter remained clear. Lily knelt. At the base of the stone the soil was darker than the ground around it, mixed with tiny black fragments, charcoal. She rubbed one piece between finger and thumb. It broke into powder. Nothing more had been buried there. No treasure, no second box. Only the remains of a fire put out nearly 70 years earlier. Back inside, Lily searched the workroom until late afternoon. The lamp stood on the top shelf of a narrow cupboard behind the pattern cartoons. Brass dot green with age, its reservoir still held the faint odor of old oil. A cast whale was worked into the base, tail raised beneath the burner. Lily cleaned the wick channel with a pin, filled the reservoir with Frank's lamp oil, and trimmed a new cotton wick to a shallow curve. She struck one match. The flame rose too high. She lowered it. A small steady light settled beneath the chimney glass. For a few minutes she stood exactly where someone else had once stood before winter dawns. The hall did not become less ruined, but it became inhabited. That evening, kindness began arranging itself in Lily's mind through ordinary objects. Mrs. Ward had stamped an $8 deed and then searched an old file instead of sending her away. Amos Pike had left 3 pieces of dry maple beside the door without asking whether she deserved them. Frank McAvoy had opened a credit ledger for someone with $17 and no job. At Doris Bell's cafe, the woman behind the counter had wrapped half a roll in an extra napkin and quietly added a hard-boiled egg Lily had not paid for. None of them had changed her life in a single grand act. They had made the next hour possible, then the hour after that. Before this story moves on, think about one small kindness someone once gave you when they had no idea how badly you needed it. A meal, a ride, a door held open at the right moment. If you remember one, tell us in the comments. Sometimes the person who gave it never learns how far it traveled. That night, Lily moved her bedding into the workroom. She placed the tin box beneath the table, the metal wrapped in linen, the old shears beside Evelyn's wooden comb, and Margaret's letter beneath her folded coat. The brass lamp burned low until she slept. The first snow came on December 3rd. 4.5 inches fell before dawn and lay across the north roof in a smooth white sheet that made the sagging line easier to see. Lily stood in the yard with Evelyn's notebook tucked beneath her coat and counted rafters through the places where shingles had already failed. Then she went inside and read the roofing chapter and Frank McAvoy's repair manual 3 times. The hall measured roughly 30 by 70 feet, but only the worst north section could be repaired before winter deepened. She calculated 12 squares of shingles for the damaged slope, 3 rolls of roofing felt, and 25 pounds of galvanized nails, allowing extra for waste and the crooked edges where old work would meet new. Frank studied the figures, close enough to be dangerous. He crossed out one number, added 11%, then disappeared into the back room. He returned, carrying a roofing hatchet with a square pole, a worn leather grip, and notches cut into one side for measuring exposure. My brother's Lily recognized the brother from the free repair manual. How much? Frank shook his head. He'd object to being useful this late. The skilled help arrived the following morning. Walter Pease was 72, narrow as a fence rail, and had roofed houses around Lowell for 40 years before arthritis ended the paid work. His right hand curled slightly even when relaxed. He climbed Lily's ladder, looked once across the roof, and came down. I will not take money. I wasn't going to ask for free labor. Good. Then we're both comfortable. For 11 days they worked whenever the shingles were dry enough to hold a boot. Walter taught Lily to sister the worst rafter rather than remove it, fastening a new full-length timber alongside the split old member so the load carried through both. They snapped a chalk line across each course to keep the exposure true even where the roof wandered. He taught her to drive roofing nails in 3 deliberate strokes. Set, dot, drive, seat, not 5 nervous taps, not 1 reckless blow. On the 4th morning, Walter pointed with his hammer, "That nail's proud." Lily looked, barely 1/8 of an inch. She reached for the hatchet. Pull it. She did. Another nail went in. On the 7th day, wind lifted the felt before they could secure the upper edge. Lily threw herself flat across it while Walter nailed along the chalk line, his coat snapping behind him. By mid-December, the patched roof carried a new plane of cedar shingles from ridge to eave. The line was not beautiful, it was honest. That night, rain struck the north slope for 3 hours. Lily placed 6 empty pans beneath the repaired section. In the morning, all 6 were dry. January revealed what fire had hidden. Once the stove was used daily, warmth dried the chimney face and loosened old mortar already weakened by decades of weather. Several bricks near the roofline began to spall, their fired surfaces flaking away in thin red scales. Below them, mortar joints crumbled beneath Lily's fingertip into pale powder. Walter would not let her patch over it. Loose masonry does not become sound because you cover it. Frank sold her hydraulic lime and fire clay on credit. For the hottest interior joints, Lily mixed roughly 3 parts fire clay mortar material to 1 part compatible binder according to the old repair notes Frank found with the supplies, making only small batches so nothing stiffened before she could place it. On the exterior courses, she used hydraulic lime mortar soft enough to move with the old brick rather than trapping moisture behind hard, modern cement. She raked failing joints to sound material, brushed out dust, dampened each repair before packing new mortar. The work lasted 3 weeks. Most mornings stayed in the 20s. She could not shape the joints properly through heavy gloves, so every 15 minutes she worked barehanded until her fingers became slow and waxy, then went inside to warm them around a mug of water near the stove. One morning she dropped the pointing trowel because she could no longer feel that she was holding it. After that, she used a kitchen timer, 15 minutes outside. 5 minutes warming, no argument. By late January, the rebuilt courses had cured enough for a cautious test. Lily rolled newspaper beneath 3 dry maple splits and lit them. The first flame trembled, then strengthened. She went outside. A narrow gray ribbon rose from the chimney and traveled cleanly above the roof without spilling from a joint. Inside, the fire drew steadily. Lily held her palm near the stove. Nothing smoked, nothing crumbled. She let the fire burn for 1 hour and no longer. The floors came next because Lily had begun to understand which repairs changed survival and which changed the spirit of a room. Most of the original boards were wide white pine. Some measured nearly 14 inches across. Their surfaces were black beneath old finish, grime, spilled dye, and a century of boots. Hand-cut rose-head nails still held the boards to the joists, each head slightly different from the next. Lily refused to replace boards that remained sound. She rented a random orbit sander for $14 a day. Frank made her buy dust masks before he would release it. Old floors contain old mistakes. She began with 80 grit. The first pass removed dirt and failed finish but left the wood dull and uneven. At 120 grit, the grain began to open. The third pass at 220 quieted the surface beneath her palm without polishing away every shallow scar. She worked around the rose head nails individually. Where one stood high, she set it carefully with a nail punch rather than grinding its face away. Then came oil, 3 thin coats, each wiped carefully along the grain. 48 hours of cure before she trusted the final surface beneath furniture. The color changed slowly. What had appeared almost black became dark honey near the windows, deepening toward mahogany wherever old dye had entered the grain. One morning, she did none of it. She woke before sunrise with the sander waiting beside the wall and the oil rag sealed safely in a metal pail. She put on her coat, then walked to the marsh. A great blue heron stood in shallow water with one leg hidden beneath its body. Lily watched it for nearly an hour. The bird did not hurry. Neither did she. She stayed until it opened its wings and crossed the marsh with slow, prehistoric strokes. Then she returned to the hall, ate bread beside the stove, and left the tools untouched for the rest of the day. The floor waited. There were 8 windows worth saving. 3 had no glass at all. 4 contained cracked panes patched with tape, cardboard, or thin scraps of wood. The 8th held one original pane that Frank believed might date to 1788, its surface faintly wavy and full of small trapped bubbles. Lily marked that pane with blue chalk on the sash. Do not remove. She repaired around it. For the others, she scraped failed glazing carefully, softened stubborn sections with controlled heat, and removed old points one at a time. Frank gave her a tub of DAP 33 glazing compound. Warm it in your hands first. She rolled the putty into thin ropes, pressed a bedding layer into the rabbet, set each pane gently, fixed it with glazing points, and tooled the outer putty into a clean bevel that would shed water away from the glass. The first bevel looked terrible. She scraped it off. The second looked merely uncertain. By the 4th window, the putty followed the sash in one continuous line. Several sash cords had rotted through. Lily replaced them with 1/4-inch cotton sash cord, feeding each length over the pulley and down into the weight pocket. At the counterweight, she tied a compact figure-8 knot that could not pull through the hole when the sash dropped. The old cast-iron weights disappeared inside the wall again. Lift, balance, and release. The sash stayed where she placed it. By the last window, February light had begun changing. Not warmer yet. Only longer. Lily was setting the final glazing point when a chickadee landed on a walnut branch just beyond the glass. It turned its black-capped head once toward her. Lily stopped with the putty knife in her hand. The bird remained for 3 breaths, then it flew. She pressed the last bead of putty into place and drew the knife along the edge in one slow, unbroken stroke. The plaster failed 3 times beside the chimney. Lily's first patch dried too fast and cracked by morning. The second pulled away from the hand-split oak lath because she had not dampened the old edges deeply enough. The third held for 2 days, then sagged in one soft sheet. Frank brought her an old feed sack. Inside was clean horsehair his father had saved from a demolition job. Thought that this had become mouse bedding. Lily separated the fibers by hand and mixed them into lime plaster for the base work. She pushed a scored scratch coat through the oak lath until it mushroomed behind the strips and locked itself in place. After that cured, she laid a 3/8-inch brown coat, leveled it with a wooden float, and left it untouched for 72 hours. The finished coat went on 1/8 inch thick. No rushing, no stove blasting heat against the wall. When the final surface tightened beneath the trowel, Lily could still see where old plaster ended and her work began. She left the difference visible. These patches will hold another 100 years. The thought arrived without ceremony. She washed the trowel. Doris Bell began leaving paper bags on the doorstep before sunrise. The first held 2 biscuits, an apple, and a jar of chicken soup wrapped in newspaper. The second contained cornbread. The third had a note written on the back of a cafe receipt. Eat something with salt. Doris was a square-shouldered woman with silver hair cut blunt at her jaw and reading glasses that hung from a red cord. When Lily finally carried the empty jars back to the cafe, she placed $3 beside them. Doris pushed the bills across the counter with one flour-dusted finger. "You can pay me in candles when the shop reopens." Lily looked toward the steamed window. "What shop?" Doris had already turned away. "Whatever this place becomes." A week later, a bicycle bell rang outside the hall. A boy of perhaps 16 stood in the yard beside a blue Schwinn, holding a splitting maul across the handlebars. He was tall, freckled, and wore one trouser cuff caught in a metal bicycle clip. Caleb Finch. Lily waited. He lifted the maul. Wood. He split nearly half a cord before noon, placing each piece beneath the repaired eave without being told. When Lily offered him $2, he shook his head, my mother said. "About your grandfather." "My grandfather?" Caleb looked confused, then embarrassed. "Maybe great-grandfather." He wiped his palms on his jeans. "She said Mercer's helped people here once." Before Lily could ask more, he mounted the Schwinn and rode away with the maul tied awkwardly across the rear rack. Reverend Boyd required even less explanation. He was a thin black man in his late 60s who walked Weaver Lane every morning wearing the same brown felt hat and carrying a silver-headed cane he rarely seemed to need. The first week he only tipped his hat. The second he began leaving the gate latched when the wind opened it. One morning, Lily was standing on a ladder repairing a loose exterior board when he stopped. He looked up. She looked down. He removed his hat. "Lord, steady these hands." 4 words. Then he replaced the hat and continued toward town. Lily stayed on the ladder until he disappeared around the walnut trees. Then she drove the next nail. Lily postponed the cellar until February 11th. She had found the door earlier beneath a warped hatch at the rear of the workroom, but the stairs vanished into darkness and cold air rose through the cracks with the smell of stone and old earth. When she finally went down, she carried 2 lamps. 7 granite steps descended to a 12 by 15-foot cellar floored entirely in fieldstone. The walls sweated near the bottom. There were no shelves, no jars, no furnace, only stone. At the center lay one dressed granite slab, smoother than everything around it. A carved mark occupied one corner, 2 vertical lines crossed by a looping horizontal thread. A weaver's mark. Lily knelt beside it. The slab had an iron lifting notch. She did not touch it. Some doors could remain closed until there was a reason to open them. On the way back up, her lamp caught something wedged beneath the 3rd granite step, a small oak box. She worked it free with both hands. Inside lay a brass key and a tintype wrapped in linen. The key's bow was shaped like a tiny shuttle. The photograph showed a young woman standing outside the hall in summer. She wore a white blouse with the sleeves rolled past her elbows. One hand rested on a tall tapestry comb. Lily stared at the face. The mouth was hers. So were the deep-set eyes and the slight unevenness of the brows. She turned the tintype over, written in faded ink, "Clara Vale Mercer, daughter of Ruth Mercer Vale, age 25, summer of 1903. Lily carried the photograph upstairs. The brass key went onto the mantel. She tried it nowhere, not in the cupboards, not in the desk, not in the remaining locks. For now, it hung from a square nail above the stove, its shuttle-shaped bow catching the lamplight. By March, the snow began retreating from the south side of the hall in gray ridges. The creek beyond the marsh grew loud with meltwater. In April, the walnut trees opened their first catkins, long green tassels moving in the wind where winter branches had seemed dead. Lily cleaned the loom. She did not warp it. Not yet. She had enough wool, enough tools, enough instruction to make dangerous mistakes confidently. That was not the same as being ready. She chose one common silver coin from the cache and exchanged it carefully for modern money after having its value checked. From that, she bought wool, linen warp, alum, and a small quantity of natural dye material. No grand tapestry, only samples. 4 inches wide. Then 6, edges first. Color joins. Warp tension. One problem at a time. The unfinished phoenix remained wrapped in linen beside the loom. Lily passed it each morning without uncovering it. The house was patient, so was she. 2 winters later, in December 2024, Lily cut the final weft on the first tapestry she considered complete. It measured only 22 inches wide. No phoenix, no grand historical scene. She had woven the walnut trees in late autumn, their black branches rising against a pale field, with one narrow red thread crossing the lower edge like a path nearly lost beneath leaves. The selvages were straight, the color joins held, the warp showed nowhere it should not. She laid it flat on the long work table and waited until daylight before deciding it was finished. Then she turned it over. On the back, every knot remained visible. She left them that way. The hall had changed quietly around her. The pine floors carried lamplight instead of grime. 8 restored windows held weather outside without erasing their old waviness. Lime-plastered walls showed subtle changes of hand where new work met 18th and 19th century work. The loom stood upright beneath the repaired beams. Frank's orange repair manual remained on a shelf, still borrowed. The brass key remained on the mantel until the spring after Lily finished the walnut tapestry. That April, Caleb came to help clear storm-broken branches near the oldest walnut tree. His axe struck metal. Not buried metal, mounted metal. A small brass plate had been fixed to the trunk decades earlier and nearly swallowed by bark. At its center was a keyhole shaped like a narrow oval. Lily went inside. She returned, carrying the shuttle-bowed key. It turned once. A shallow iron-lined compartment opened from behind the plate. Inside, protected by waxed canvas, rested a folded 48-star American flag and a narrow envelope. The letter was dated October 3, 1918. Clara Vale Mercer had written it while Thomas Mercer served with the American Expeditionary Forces in France during the First World War. She did not write about glory. She wrote about the hall, about keeping his bench untouched, about saving enough lamp oil for winter, about their son asking why his father's boots were still beside the door. The final paragraph was shorter. If Thomas returned, she wrote, they would hang the flag above the loom for one day and then put it away because a flag was not meant to replace a person. Thomas did return to Massachusetts. He died months later from complications of wounds received in France. The flag had never been displayed. Lily refolded it along its old creases. On November 11, 2025, Veterans Day, she carried Thomas Mercer's 1918 medal to Lowell Cemetery. There was no ceremony. Caleb came, so did Reverend Boyd. They found the Mercer family stone beneath wet oak leaves. Lily placed the medal there for 1 hour. Before leaving, she wrapped it again and brought it home. The money remained more complicated. $46,000 in old currency and coins could have transformed her life quickly. She chose not to let it. Over the first 3 years, Lily used only 4 coins. 1 paid for weaving materials. 1 helped replace a dangerously cracked section of foundation stone. 1 covered part of the well restoration after laboratory testing showed bacterial contamination. The 4th paid for proper wiring in the workroom so the old timber hall would not depend forever on extension cords and lamp flame. Everything else returned to the tin box. She added new archival sleeves, a written inventory, Margaret's letter. Then she placed a paper across the top for the next one. The box went back into the compartment beneath the oak treadle, not because Lily expected to die soon, because inheritance worked better when prepared before it became urgent. The shop reopened so quietly that no one could agree on the date. Doris settled the question by pinning an index card to the cafe corkboard. Hand-woven tapestry repairs and small commissions weaver Hollisk for Lilino telephone number. At first, 3 people wrote their names beneath it, then 11. Within a year, Lily kept a mailing list of more than 40. She repaired damaged tapestry borders, cleaned old wool under controlled conditions, rewove missing corners where enough original structure remained, and occasionally accepted a small pictorial commission. She still refused work she did not know how to do, especially then. The first sign that Caleb carved was too large. He arrived one Saturday carrying it across his bicycle handlebars, though by then he was nearly grown and the old Schwinn had become comically small beneath him. The board read, Mercer and Val Tapestry. Weaver's Lily looked at him. That sign already exists. I know. He turned the board around. On the reverse, carved in smaller letters, were 2 words. Daughters Lily ran her thumb through the fresh-cut grooves. There weren't always daughters. Caleb shrugged. There are now. He climbed the ladder before she could object. Instead of replacing the old sign, they mounted his smaller edition beneath it, Mercer and Val Tapestry. Weavers and Daughters, no. One discussed whether the grammar was historically correct. Doris brought coffee. Frank stood in the road with both hands in his apron pockets and complained that the left side was a quarter-inch low. It was not. Years later, Lily began her own letter. She used heavy rag paper. The first page took 3 attempts. The fourth began, "My dear one, whoever you are." She did not tell the future reader how to live. She wrote where the water shutoff was, which chimney bricks had been replaced, how to recognize moth damage before larvae reached the wool. She explained that the north roof would probably need another full replacement before 2050 and that the old pane in the east window must never be mistaken for defective glass. Then she wrote about weaving, keep your warp honest, do not disguise a weak join, rest your hands before fatigue teaches them a bad movement. Leave enough material for repair. She included Evelyn's sentence, "A broken thread is not the end of the cloth." And later, near the bottom of the second page, she wrote another line that had followed her through cold floors, old letters, failed plaster, and all the careful work that came afterward. Every broken thread can be tied and woven into a new beginning. She stopped there. Outside, evening moved between the walnut trunks. One window stood open because the April air was mild. From the workroom came the small wooden knock of a shuttle being set down. Lily folded the unfinished letter once, then unfolded it again. It was not ready to be hidden, neither was she. The old tapestry weaver's hall waits. It has always waited. It waits through winters, through empty rooms, through hands that leave and hands that return, holding only what patient work can keep. And in Mrs. Ward's desk at the county office, one artifact from the beginning remains. The first dollar bill Lily used toward the $8 purchase. Mrs. Ward had exchanged it from the payment before depositing the rest, written the deed number lightly in pencil along its margin, and slipped it beneath the old property card. She never spent it. Years later, when the drawer opens, the bill is still there. Folded once. Waiting.